Labvakar, esiet sveicināti darbnīcā ievads reāla laika mūzikas programmēšanā. Esat gatavi? Jā.
Anna, vari atspīvot sevi?
Esiet sveicināti darbnīcā ievads reāla laika mūzikas programmēšanā. Esat gatavi? Jā.
Anna, vari atspīvot? Kas ir man?
Laikam tagad viss kārtībā.
Man it kā bija slēgts tas mikrofons, es nezinu, kas tur.
Labi, tad sāksim. Labvakar visiem. Esiet sveicināti darbnīcā ievads reāla laika mūzikas programmēšanā ar SuperCollider, kas norisinās cikla Update Hybrid Labs ietvaros. Update Hybrid Labs ir brīvpieejas digitālās mākslas lekciju, darbnīcu un diskusiju cikls ar mērķi veicināt mākslinieku un citu interesantu digitālās prasmes jaunradei, ko organizē Liepajas Universitātes mākslas pētījuma laboratorija ar Eiropas komisijas programmas Radošā Eiropa atbalstu projektu Green ietvaros. Tā kā mums ir starptautiski viesi, mēs turpināsim pasākumu angļu valodā. Hello everyone, my name is Krista Dintere. I'm a sound artist and lecturer here in Liepaja University and your host for today. So welcome. We welcome you to the workshop Introduction to Live Coding with SuperCollider as part of Update Hybrid Labs event series. So, Update Hybrid Labs is a free lecture, discussion and workshop cycle aimed to empower artists and other interested people with digital skills for creative content creation. And it is organized by Liepaja University Art Research Lab and supported by EU program Creative Europe. So today we will start with presentation and live coding demo by Shelly Knotts, followed by a discussion. And we will continue the event tomorrow with workshop on Thursday and Friday late afternoons from 4 to 7 p.m. So I invite you all to write your questions to Shelly here on Zoom chat or on YouTube comments section. Or to raise a hand at the end of the discussion. So, hello Shelly, I'm glad to introduce you here from Liepaja. Shelly Knotts is an improviser who performs with computers and other humans. She's interested in code and data and networks, and this has led her down a kind of strange and diverse musical path, starting from electroacoustic composition through jazz and noise music to Algorave, which we will be exploring more during this workshop. She has performed at numerous Algoraves and other live coding events worldwide as solo artist and with collaborative projects including her algo pop duo Algo Babes. I'm sure she will tell us more about it. And Shelly Knotts has completed a PhD in live computer music at Durham University, where she continues her postdoctoral research and completed a master's degree in composition at University of Birmingham. And in 2017 she was a winner of BBC Radio Workshop and PRSF the Orem Awards for Innovation in Sound and Music. We welcome you, Shelly, and I invite you to tell us more about your creative practice, as well introduce us to the field of live coding and the exciting world of Algoraves. So welcome, Shelly, and I give a word to you.
Hi, thanks Krista for lovely introduction, and also to Hybrid Labs for inviting me to be here. So I'm really excited to spend a few days exploring live coding and Algorave with you all. So I have a bit of a slideshow that I'm going to go through to tell you a little bit about myself and also a bit about live coding and Algorave. And then after that, I'm going to do a little demo using SuperCollider, and then I think we're going to go into Q&A after that. So I'm just going to get my slides up. Can you all see that? Good, cool. Perfect. So so this workshop this week is called the Introduction to Live Coding using SuperCollider, and we're going to focus on SuperCollider because that's like the tool that I use and one of the more often used tools in live coding. Just to give you an idea of what I'm going to talk about today, I'm just going to introduce myself a bit, talk about what's live coding, a little bit about Algorave, talk a little bit about failure, because that's kind of like part and parcel of live coding, as I'm sure everyone will discover during this week. And then maybe I'll show you one of the pieces that I've done recently. Let's see how the time goes. And then I'll do a bit of a demo. So a bit about me. I've been live coding since about 2012, and it was all kind of, as with most of my musical career, it was not really, I didn't really set out to be a live coder or to work with computers or really, maybe I wanted to be a composer, but this was all kind of the result of people saying, hey, do you want to try this? And me being like, yeah, that sounds cool. I'm going to do that and see how it goes. So I'd been using SuperCollider for quite a long time at that point, but more working with instruments and processing their sound in various ways. And then from that, I did some projects with jazz musicians. And I always kind of struggled to feel like I was like able to like improvise in the same way that they were able to improvise. I guess I was interested in not having to make too many decisions before I go on stage. So I tried out live coding because I thought maybe that's a more flexible way of improvising, and I knew lots of other people who were doing live coding, so I just thought I would give it a go. And then I think around 2013 I got asked to play at an Algorave, and it was just like, I do not know how to make dance music, but I'm just gonna try and make my noise music in a more quantized 4/4 beat-based way and see how it happens. So that was kind of like my weird journey into live coding and Algorave, and that's kind of most of, or like a lot of what I've been doing since. So it's kind of taken over my life a bit, hopefully you'll see this week that it's a little bit addictive once you get into it. So alongside Algorave, I kind of have other things I do. So I'm like really interested in network music. So that's about like collaborating with other people, like sharing data in various ways. And that's also, I also use SuperCollider for that as well. So like the good thing about SuperCollider is like, it's this like huge program, and live coding is like one of the things you can do with it, but you can do a lot more as well. So if you're also interested in like electronic composition or like other styles of improvisation or like working with instrumental musicians or something, you can do all of that in SuperCollider. Network music was kind of like what my PhD was about. I'm like really interested in collaboration. A lot of the time I'm working with like sharing data with other musicians during a performance. So it might be like I'm sending them like the pitches that I'm playing, or they're sending that to me, and they're like integrating it in what they're doing as well, stuff like that. I've spent the last 10 years collaborating with lots of different people, which I always find really interesting to like find a new way of working depending on what the context is. So I've played in various laptop ensembles. This is me collaborating with Alex McLean, who's like kind of the person who invented live coding, or at least Algorave, in a quarry in the hills outside of Sheffield in the north of England. And this is another ensemble I was in where we were live coding in like a town square in some tiny town also in the north of England. And I've also worked with jazz musicians, and I work with visualists like really often. Like a lot of the times when you play it in an Algorave, you'll just kind of get paired up with someone who makes visuals, so you won't necessarily like be able to talk to them beforehand about what they're going to do or what you're going to do. It's a really like ad hoc way of working, and you just kind of jam and see where it goes. So this was me performing with Sean Lawson, who's like a really interesting visual programmer. So I really like this kind of like coming together in like random and various different types of ways with other people, and experimenting with what I can do with that, with live coding or non-live coding or whatever. So yeah, I guess like in general, my work is all about kind of improvisation and working with algorithmic code based music systems. Be that live coding or making algorithms that change what you're doing during a performance in various ways. So for example, this is a piece I made which is called Flock, where there's all these like little agents that have like various opinions about what kind of like music they want to hear, and they're like listening to you through data and analyzing various, like it might be like what pitches you're playing, or like how noisy the sound you're making is, or how loud it is, and they each have like a different opinion about what they want to hear, and then it's for 3 performers usually, and they vote for the performer who is playing closest to what they want to hear, and then they're like mixing the 3 inputs. So if I get like 50% of the votes from the agents, then my sound is mixed to like a 50% of its normal level, or if I get 80%, I get 80% of the level. Anyway, this is all kind of off topic, but essentially I'm doing stuff like that that's like both live coding and other things as well. So yeah, I've worked on a bunch of other types of projects as well. When I'm live coding, I'm mostly working in SuperCollider, but I've also worked with Hydra, which I think you also have a workshop on soon, or already had a workshop on with Liepaja, which is, if you still have a chance to go to that, I would do it because Hydra's awesome. Ooh. Sorry about that. And I've also worked with SonicPy, which is another audio programming language, and RIXC lang, and Tidal in various other projects as well. Sorry, I don't know what's going on here. So yeah, I'm really interested in improvising, building collaborative systems, and I've also worked across a bunch of different genres. So like Algorave is kind of what I do the most of right now. But I kind of came from a background of more like experimental music and working with noise and jazz musicians. Sorry. Okay. I think I'm okay now. And for the last 3 years, I've been working on a research project in the UK, which is called Mimic. So that's about using AI and machine learning and machine listening in various like sound-based projects. And I'm also a member of an ensemble called SuperContinent, which is a global live coding ensemble who sorry, I think I need a minute.
Okay, so let's wait for Shelly to get well again. On the meantime, yes, there's some information from Art Research Lab. So the workshop on Hydra will happen online from 5th to 7th of May. So if you're interested, you can as well send an email to info@mplab.lv. We will surely have a Facebook event soon with the information to apply. But so yeah, it will be the workshop leader will be Olivia Jack, which is quite a notable artist as well in the live coding scene. So yes. As well. Yes, let's just wait a bit. Yes, let's just wait for Shelly to return. Yeah, so I hope these 2 days gain some new knowledge in SuperCollider, and yeah, as well, I think it will be interesting for people who are just starting out, as well for people who already have done some things with SuperCollider. It would be possible to ask a lot of questions to Shelly, as she's a pro in this. Should be. Okay, yeah, Shelly, that's it. She has a problem. Okay, we'll be back in a few minutes. Yes. Some info on the Hydra workshop. I think that there's a question will the workshop happen around the same time as well, after 4 p.m. I guess yes, and that's the plan. Here, see some Hydra, which is as well like filling network visuals software. I think
like important have good visuals with the audio. And like Shelly, are you all right? Okay, so we have Shelly, but today we have here with us Maria and Anna from MPLab. Maybe you could tell us a bit more on this this workshop series and what actually is update hybrid labs and what's the plan for further events, maybe.
No, Shelly needs to take 10 minutes break for her allergy drugs to work. So I guess I need to take a little pause for making a tea. And then we start again in 10 minutes. So we can't really help, the physiology. So these things happen. So then we, if somebody wants, can make some tea. If not, then we can just hang around and then wait for Shelly to join us again. And yeah. The format, we have invited Olivia and Jack to do also a workshop in 2 weeks in the beginning of May after the big Latvian independence celebrations. And the format is the same for people who work to join in afternoons and also do some generative content creation and learn how to do it. I am also not an expert, so I can't tell very much on the generation itself. That's why we have invited Olivia to do the workshop.
Anna, maybe you can tell a bit more how to apply for the Hydra workshop.
I still haven't. I will publish this application form just as I did for this workshop in a week. So 1 week prior to the workshop, because I'm again afraid that too many people will apply and I will not be able to choose because I want for everybody to get new knowledge. So yeah, an application form will be posted on MPLab Mākslas pētījumu laboratorija Facebook page, on our web page, and published on social media and Latvian public media. So follow the informations. And you can also just like express your interest also prior to that, and I will publish you on the guest list, just like mark you on the guest list, not publishing your name. This is not needed. but yeah, I will take note on your interest. If you write to info@mplab.lv. And yeah, if you are interested in workshops like this, Art Research Laboratory of Liepaja University organizes workshops regularly on both digital and analog content creation. We have had workshops on like installation building, sound art, different kinds of recordings and sonifications, visualizations, photogrammetry, both for visual art and sound art. So yeah, follow. You can also follow our channels to get information about new workshops that are on our program in the future too. We in our research lab we organize also this annual international festival update. I will clean my desktop so I can share the screen. So yeah, this is our festival page, update.mplab, where one can get information about the international festival. Currently, it's like very minimal because the fest itself will happen on late November, the last week of November, and it was formerly known as iWeek, the International Week. So I can just like show you, go through what some old events. Oh wow, what is this? Okay, accept all. So workshops. This is some photo documentation of 2018, so 3 years ago. During this international week, we had a guest laser scanning workshop where a professor from Germany with very expensive equipment came, and Latvian artists could apply to this workshop and to do like architectural 3D scans in Liepaja, which is a very nice town to come to. And then they built 3D games and 3D environments, and people could enjoy the VR art produced by workshop participants. There was also a radio art workshop led by Jan Glockner, a radio artist also from Germany and Lithuania. So lots of people in VR and a lot of people sitting at computers. This is digital art. There was also a 360 video workshop this year when the medium was quite fresh and we wanted to really experiment what can be done with it and how should the narrative be adapted to this medium of 360 video. A lot of pictures. This was a very nice event in the beginning when people could be very close to each other. As you can see, we had installed a little 8-speaker kind of immersive sound experience where the artist Jakob Bremen from Denmark came, and he's interested. He's quite critical actually about technology, and he was making this opening event of our Update Festival of 2018, making this immersive meditation experience. And as this spatial sound has these like really physical properties, you could also feel the sound with your body. So we all gathered inside this circle of loudspeakers and enjoyed his composition, his multi-channel composition, which he built using recordings of Wi-Fi router signals, sonifications also of some signals which are used in our wireless communication, which builds our everyday nowadays. And I guess I'm really missing these times when one could really gather together and enjoy some sound art. And hopefully the vaccination works and we can get back to that soon. And invite you guys also in Liepaja. This is all this 1 year.
Yes, I think Shelly is back.
Oh, Shelly's back. Or can I stop sharing? I hope everything is fine and your health is back, Shelly.
Hi, I'm back. Sorry about that. I opened the window to let some air in, but I'm like allergic to pollen, and I think there's just a lot of pollen in the air today, and it just like set all my allergies off. So that was like a new one for me when giving a workshop. So I'm sorry about that. But it was also, yeah, it was really nice though to see the space in Liepaja. Dana just showed us. So it all worked out good in the end. So where was I? I was talking about this ensemble supercontinent I'm in, which has been like probably one of the projects that we've been working on most consistently in the last year, because it's a network ensemble. So we have like members in like every continent on the planet, and we all collaborate together using this browser-based platform called ASTE, where everyone can see everyone's code, and you hear everything that everyone else is making. And so in that project, I'm using Tidal, and I think tomorrow or Thursday, I'm going to try and set up a little jam for us and like just introduce some like super basics of Tidal so that we can have a little live code jam together, because it's just a really nice interface to be using at the minute when no one can really be in the same space. So it's kind of nice to maybe see some of that side of things. And there's some other network platforms as well for live coding, but this one is the one that I think people are using most at the minute. So that's enough about me. So just to try to explain to you what live coding is. Live coding is essentially just about performing with code. So live coders get on stage with their laptops, they use various programming languages, and they type code into their computer that's going to make, in my case, sound, but also visuals. And there's also some people who work with dance and other like experimental art forms. So I also have a friend who Live Code's web pages as like a performance as well, using JavaScript. So that's also really fun. So yeah, there's a lot of experimental practices, but the top and the bottom of it is any practice where you get on stage and you're writing code on stage, or like editing code that you've already written on stage, counts as live coding. So it's pretty open. To give you like a really short background of where this came from, there's been people live coding since around 2000. So Alex McLean, who's based in the UK, was one of the first live coders, and also Julian Rohrhuber, who's in Germany. He wrote the library that we're going to use in SuperCollider this week, also around 2000, 2002. So it's kind of like one of the first libraries for live coding, and it's kind of like maybe a bit old school now to use this library, but I like love it for like the type of sound that I want to make. So that's what I use, and it's what I teach, and I'm still trying to convert people to live coding synthesis with SuperCollider. So yeah, this is stuff that's been around for quite a long time now. And in around 2004, there was like a few more people who'd got interested in this. And then they started TopLab, which is the temporary organization for the promotion of live algorithmic performance, I think. At the time, it was kind of like a manifesto where they tried to talk about like, what is live coding and like, what are we doing? And that kind of still exists on the web, but the more useful resource now from TopLab is toplab.org, which is kind of like the home of live coding on the web. So that's like a really cool website where people like write about their projects, and there's like links to like other places that you can find out about live coding, and also like various like forums and like links to software and stuff like that. So yeah, if you're like interested in the community and other things that are going on with live coding, that's like a really good place to like start to find out what's going on. So I guess like live coding existed as like kind of a experimental practice for quite a while, and then around 2012, Alex McLean and Nick Collins, who I've worked with in Durham for quite a few years, coined the term Algorave, and I think the story goes that they were like driving home from a gig at like 3 a.m. in the morning or something, and they were like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we had like a dance music party for like live coding? And then they came up with this like stupid term Algorave, and they were like, yeah, let's do it and let's call it an Algorave. And then they made like a party in London, which was like, which I was at weirdly, but it was totally random that I was there. But it was like in this like weird noise venue, like halfway up a skyscraper in East London somewhere, in like this like weird studio flat space. So that was kind of like the first Algorave, but it was like never really supposed to be serious. And then I guess like Algorave kind of went on for a while, and then sort of like somehow ended up being this like big global community of people who are making dance music parties with live coding. So yeah, Algorave is kind of a big thing in live coding. And then, yeah, 2015, we started making like a conference, which was more like our academic get together where we talk about all the nerdy stuff, like developing new languages and like different types of performance, and like have workshops and a lot of performances and stuff. So we started that about, 6 years ago now. And that's still going. And it's always like a really fun get together of people from around the world who do stuff with live coding. And yeah, I guess one of the great things about like this expanding community is there's like so many languages for live coding now. So it used to be like SuperCollider and Tidal were kind of like the main ones. But now people are just making like mini languages for like doing their own particular style of live coding. So like, yeah, if you don't like SuperCollider, that's like cool. You can try something else that might like do more something that you want to do. And yeah, so it's a pretty like global scene now, the live coding scene, which is awesome. And yeah, I guess you want to know how live coding sounds. I guess that's kind of in some ways like yeah, it like live coding isn't a genre. It's kind of like a way of making music. So it's like making music with a like DAW, so like with Ableton or like Logic or something. Is like, yeah, there's no like genre of live coding. It's just like whatever you want to do with it. So I thought I would just play you like a little video quickly of one version of live coding. Which you can't see because screen share. Let's just switch this. So this is Alexandra Cardenas, who's a live coder who has more of a like experimental music background. Yeah, so this is in SuperCollider. I think she's using Tidal more these days, but this is 2014, so a while ago. But yeah, you'll see she has this like yeah, I guess you won't see now, but she has this like really different way of using SuperCollider for me. So from me, so like even within like languages, people are like using the languages in like really different styles and stuff. So there's not really a way to live code. It's just what you want to do with code. I'm just trying to play a different video for you. Yeah, so that one is Alex McLean and Matthew Yeaking. Matthew's playing with the electronic drum kit, which is also like connected with some code interface as well, so he can both like play the drums and code during the set. And Alex is using tidal cycles. Obviously, that's like a pretty different style to Alexandra's stuff. So let's just go back to the slideshow. So yeah, there's no real genre. It's just about finding your own style and doing live coding with it. So yeah, live coding is kind of happening in like a lot of different places. So it's not only about Algorave. This is like a Algorave at the top here in like a festival in 2016, I think. we ended up with this like huge crowd because we like played like when Underworld were finishing their set and before DJ Yoda was starting his like Underworld was on the main stage and DJ Yoda was going to start in our tent after us, so everyone came from like the Underworld set to hear DJ Yoda and got some Algorave in between. Anyway, so it looks like Algorave's really popular, but I think it was just circumstantial. But yeah, there's like a lot of Algoraves going on in like kind of underground clubs and festivals and yeah, more experimental venues as well, and also like education projects. Like Sonic Pi is kind of big in like education and schools and stuff. Oh yeah, my slides are kind of a bit weirdly ordered here, but yeah, just to say a bit more about like Algorave, because I guess that's like kind of the more popular side of live coding here these days. And so Algoraves are essentially dance music parties where people are live coding. So there's usually music and visuals. Live coding is almost always improvisation. But it's also about, you know, sharing algorithms and also about the community who comes there. So it's not only about the people who are on stage, but also the people who are coming and dancing, because I mean, it's it's kind of rubbish for us if we perform to an empty room. So we're also interested in the people who are coming there and what they are taking from seeing the coding and sharing in that experience. And always like to talk about what Algorave isn't as well. So there's been like quite a few press articles where they've talked about Algorave as like the future of music, and how we're like gonna kill DJs with our code or something, or like take over from DJing. And I guess like we don't really think about that as like being what Algorave's about. It's more like we're doing our thing, DJs are doing their thing, we're kind of doing it here and now, not at like some point in the future. It's just like a scene that's happening, and it's not about like changing anything or like breaking any cultures. It's just about sharing code and being together. It's also not really serious programming, so I don't think anyone like writes their like most well-written and beautiful code or like complicated code while they're on stage. At least for me, it's more about just like hacking things together and like making it work. And like the SuperCollider code I write when I'm not on stage is like, you know, maybe has some like form and technicality to it, and the stuff that I write while I'm on stage, it's just like, how can I make this make sound right now? Like, how can I change this sound like right now? There's no like real like serious programming thought going in there. It's also not a genre, and there's a lot of genres of Algorave, so from like techno to like more like EDM, shoegaze, like you know, any kind of beat-based algorithmic music. There's like some Mexican performers who are like almost exclusively playing like Latin American dance music. Yeah, so it's about exploring those genres through code, rather than making a new genre with code. And it's also definitely not about white men programming. There's like I guess Algorave from the start has like been interested in being a diverse scene, and it's kind of written into our like guidelines for organizing an Algorave, or it's probably like one of the only things that's written into the guidelines for organizing an Algorave is that if you've only got white men in your lineup, it's probably not really an Algorave, it's something else. Yeah, I just thought I would play another little clip of music. This was a Algorave in Sheffield in 2019. Yeah, it must be in 2019 because there were no Algoraves last year, or at least not real ones, not in-person ones. So this is me and Alex McLean and Sam, whose last name I forget right now, and Coral Manton and Olivia Jack made visuals. So this is kind of a big Algorave ensemble. I really like the visuals in this one. I think like Carl and Olivia, who were making visuals, made some like feedback loop with Hydra, and they were like sending each other's visuals through each other's visuals. It was kind of fun. Yeah. This is toplab.org, which I mentioned before. So if you want to check that out at any point, then do so. Actually, it looks a bit better than this now. This is like a really old screenshot, so it changed a bit since then. But anyways, toplab.org. Just who are the live coding community? So we're like a community of artists, musicians, and programmers. I guess like people come from like really different backgrounds into live coding. Like I came from a music background. There's like plenty of people who come from like a computing background into it. There's a performer. She goes under Lucy Cheeseman in the UK. She performs under heavy lifting. She's like a administrator at a university and came to one of our workshops and got into it. So there's no like required background for live coding. And usually our lineups like include both like people who've been doing it for a while and people who are like totally new to it as well. So like we kind of encourage people to like try it out and like perform early. Obviously there's like a bit of a problem with that right now, but hopefully you can have an Algorave in Latvia at some point. That would be cool. And yeah, it's super international, so we have this like pretty global community. UK and Mexico have really big scenes. Like the South American community is like huge now. I think Alexandra, whose performance you saw before, like went around South America like doing loads of workshops a few years ago, and like there's just this like massive South American community. Quite a few people in Japan, various places across the United States and Canada, and yeah, various places around Europe. So it's a pretty. There's also like a really big scene in India now as well. It's everywhere and it's cool. I already said before, there's not like one way to live coding, so I'll show you like kind of my way this week of like how I live code, but like that's only one version of live coding, and I think it's like good for people to experiment with different ways and also like try out like different languages as well. This website, which is called github.com/toplab/awesome live coding, and that's got like a big list of like all the live coding languages in it, and there's a lot of music ones, but there's also some that are like specifically visuals and some that do both. But yeah, if you like find that you don't really like SuperCollider, then that's fine. You can just go and try something else, and like it'll probably be really different and like kind of facilitate like a different way of making music or a different style of making music. So yeah, if you're more into beats, then probably Tidal's more your thing than SuperCollider. But if you like making funny sounds, then SuperCollider is really cool. Yeah, so these are kind of some of the softwares. So Tidal, SuperCollider, Sonic Pi, Xelang, Foxdot, and then for visuals, Hydra and LiveCodeLab are probably the big ones. There's also Fluxus, I think, is also a visuals one, and then a few sort of audio-visual things. So Gibber is probably like the main audio-visual one. Overtone's like a bit outdated, or it's quite old. PD, that's probably better for visuals than for sound, I think. But some people like that. That's more like visual coding. So I don't know if anyone uses Max MSP here, but it's like you make little boxes and connect them together. So PD is like the free version of Max. So if that's your thing, try that out. I'm kind of aware that I'm kind of running out of time, but I'm going to try and go through a few more things quickly. So I guess one of the things that's kind of really integral to live coding and has been since the start is about showing your screen. So like live coding is really about sharing. Like, so when I write code during a thing, like during a performance, I guess like I guess live coding was kind of a bit of a reaction against like laptop music, where you have someone who's like sitting on stage with a laptop and you have like no idea what they're doing, and they have like maybe this like secret max patch that you'll never get to see. And so live coding was more about like saying like, why are we being so like territorial about like our code and what we're doing to make music? Like, let's open it up and like show people and let people see what it is we're doing. And I guess that has like a lot of implications in terms of like what that means for performance. But yeah, I guess like no one really owns, like I don't really feel like I need to keep my algorithms like secret when I'm performing, because they're like also like really simple anyway. So and even if they weren't, it's fine. Let's just share. So yeah, these are kind of like, I guess, two of the things that I might make in a performance. And this one makes like kind of a funny sound. That's that one. This is another bit of code from a performance which makes like a really wonky beat. And yeah, and like I guess the point that I'm kind of making badly here right now is that I'm happy for my audience to like see these, and like I feel like it gives people like a way into like understanding what you're doing. Like if you were watching like someone play a guitar on stage, you would maybe understand something about how they're making the sound, and it's the same with code. If you see the code on stage, like maybe you don't understand the details, but you see something of how someone's like changing some numbers and it's changing the sound. Yeah, I really like talking about failure with live coding a lot, but maybe I'll leave that to the rest of the workshop, because I'm kind of aware that I'm running very short in time. But I guess like the point is that failure happens a lot in live coding, because you're writing code on stage and there's so many things that can go wrong. This is a performance where I crashed really terribly in front of about 250 people and all of my sound cut out. I didn't really know what the problem was. And so I made this face. And yeah, I guess at the time I was just like having a bit of that performer stress of like, oh no, everything's gone terribly wrong. But like I kind of really, sometimes it's really nice to have a crash on stage as well, because I'd been kind of building something up for a while. And I guess I was kind of going in a particular direction with it, and then I kind of crashed, and it made no sense to go back to what I've been doing before when I started up again. So I started with something else entirely. So it like really like changed the shape of the music quite a lot. And that's like kind of what I really enjoy about live coding, is the things that go wrong kind of really feed into like how you're making music and like which direction you might take it in. So if I make like a really horrible glitchy sound, that's also part of the music, and I need to work out how to work with it. Yeah, so when I like had that big crash on stage, like I was talking to the organizer of the event afterwards, and she was just like, oh, you know, it's cool, like crashing, that's just what happens in live coding. And it's like, yeah, that's right, because you can't ever expect that your code is going to work perfectly when you write it on stage. So it's something that's been kind of like really important to me in live coding, is like thinking about these failures and how they feed into the performance. And I've got this like really good video of a really terribly faily performance where everything kind of went horribly wrong, but maybe we'll save that for the workshop. I don't know, like how much time do I have left, Krista?
Well, we have 1 hour still to go, so
I could, okay.
We have time. And you're answering some of my questions already as you go, so.
So we already cut some time later.
Yeah. Feel free to continue.
So yeah, maybe I'm going to play this then, because it's kind of like just a demonstration of like how kind of how badly live coding can go, but like how it can also become like performative. So this was like a gig where my collaborator was in Argentina, and she was like sending her audio from there. And so because it was like a network gig, I had a different setup, and that caused like all sorts of like problems on my computer. So I kept getting this like really like glitchy sound, which wouldn't go away, and eventually it just got like stuck on that glitchy sound. So I had to like basically quit my audio and restart. But while I was doing that, her audio stream from Argentina just like totally cut out. So we just had like total silence. And it was like probably the biggest gig I've ever played. It was at the British Library in London, which is this like huge venue, and there was like 700 people there or something. But like, yeah, people were kind of really into it, like, because it was kind of this like code drama going on stage. And when my collaborator's code cut out, I like was kind of halfway through like rebooting my sound. I was just like, okay, I need to like make some sound as quickly as possible. And so I ended up just like hitting play on the sound with this like really horrible, like it's like this really high-pitched repeating horrible sound, and it's just like, okay, I have to work with this now. I've just like got to make it work. It's not what I would have chosen. But yeah, I mean, then that like kind of like that, I guess like code panic like kind of informed like the rest of the performance and how it went, and then eventually her sound came back and it was better again. Yeah, so it's quite I think it might be about 4 or 5 minutes long, but yeah, let's just play it and see. Yeah, it kind of got better after that for like the last 5 minutes, but yeah, that was kind of the code drama section of the piece. But yeah, I mean, it's like where me and my collaborator are like pretty experienced live coders, and yeah, I guess that kind of stuff just happens to anyone, like whether you've been doing it a while or it's your like first gig. So it's definitely not something to be worried about, like with live coding. It's like a very forgiving crowd. And it's like basically inevitable that something's going to go wrong. So and yeah, I guess like this kind of like I got kind of interested in like live coding and punk music after this, because like this is Coral Manton, who's like a visualist, and she was just like, yeah, live coding is the punk end of electronic music. The best performances are those where you don't know what's going to happen and you get a sense of figuring it out. And like I definitely feel like that's totally true, that like even if nothing goes like audibly wrong, like quite often like you'll write some code that just makes some sound that you're like really not expecting, and then you're trying to figure out like what is it like that I did here that's making that sound, and like how do I shape this, like how do I like make some like form out of like this kind of slightly unpredictable like way of making music. Yeah, and so I guess there's like a lot of things like that I was thinking about to do with live coding and punk. So it's like a very like DIY ethos, and it's all about kind of experimenting with forms and limits and processes. It's like a totally human-centric practice, and there's this performative, like very performative failure aspect. And yeah, I guess like most of all, like live coding is just kind of about doing simple stuff and breaking things on stage. So like, even if things are kind of going right on stage, like sometimes I'll do something like put some random numbers into maybe I just need to like break up the form a bit of what's going on, or like break up the repetition a bit. So I'll like put some random numbers into a bit of a code and like see what happens. So like, yeah, even if something unpredictable doesn't happen, like I sometimes like deliberately make something unpredictable to push the performance in a different way. Yeah, I had a piece that I did as well that I then sort of like explicitly started thinking about Riot Girl music, which is like 1990s like feminist punk music in the context of Algorave. So like kind of like thinking about like if Riot Girl happened in like the algorithmic age, like what would that be? So I wrote some like essentially like search algorithms. So I had this like big folder of Riot Girl music, and I wrote some like search algorithms that I could live code with, where I could essentially like in the performance like say, okay, give me all of the bits of Riot Girl that are like really noisy, or like the bits that have this particular pitchy sound, or the things that sound a bit vocal. Yeah, I guess like there was some deeper thoughts there about like what it means to kind of be like appropriating cultural materials in this sort of like age of like AI and online algorithms that are stealing all your data. Yeah, I just thought I would just play like a little clip of that. So this is kind of like live coding, but using punk music as the material, and like live coding the essentially like a live coded remixing of punk music. I probably should have said beforehand in this video, there's more or less like 2 layers, because it was for a gig that was supposed to be in real life, but then ended up being online, like back in April last year. And so they wanted like a pre-recorded video for an online gig, so I coded the music and then I went back and coded my own visuals to go with it. So there's like a layer of visuals on top that I did in Hydra. So that's why there's kind of like the Hydra code and also the SuperCollider code in the same window. Yeah. So I guess I'm just going to do a quick software demo so you get like a little bit of an idea of like what's going on behind the scenes in SuperCollider. And then I think we have Q&A. So I'm hoping this just works and makes sound. You hear that? Yeah, cool. So this is essentially like my setup for SuperCollider. I use an editor which is called Atom, not the normal SuperCollider window, which looks a little bit different. Mostly because in Atom you can like save bits of code under keywords, so I can do this essentially where I just type like a keyword and then it gives me a whole block of code. So I started using Atom for that, but we can just as easily live code in SuperCollider itself, and that's what we're going to do this week, just because it's a bit easier to set up. So everything that I have up here is more or less like setup code. So this is all like server settings, which is all really boring. But I'm just telling it like which hardware to use, and then I'm making myself a bunch of helper windows. So I have like the meter, which gives me like level meters, scope, which gives me like a waveform when I make some sound, yeah, like that. And then here I'm like starting the live coding session. So I'm just telling it I want you to be in live coding mode. And then this is all about, we won't use this tomorrow. I use like a particular metronome basically for setting the time, just because I quite often collaborate with other people and this is one that works over networks. So anyway, this is all stuff that you don't really need to worry about. That's the top and the bottom of it. And so this is like the kind of code that we're going to be working with tomorrow. So this is a sound that we can hear. So kind of a pitchy drone thing. So we've got it like, essentially this is an oscillator, and then we have some parameters and I can change these. So this is going to change the pitch. And I can change the volume. And then this is another parameter which is about how noisy the sound is. So if I change that to something higher, get a bit more noise. So when I live code, essentially my sets will be made up of like little chunks of code like this. And then once you have these sound making things, you can start sending them through filters. So this is like a reverb filter that I've set up. Is obviously gonna make the sound a bit bigger. And I can some parameters. So this one's the room. Obviously it's a bit hard to hear reverb on a drone. So I'm going to make it not a drone. So this is essentially another waveform that I'm using, which is going to set the volume of the waveform. So I'm going to turn it from a drone into like a pulsing sound. So yeah, I've got a pulse, so the reverb makes a bit more sense now. Can use like waveforms for like other parameters as well. So I might make another waveform that's going to change how much noise there is in the sound. Over time, it's just going from like being not very noisy to really noisy. Performance, I would probably start like layering these things up. So maybe I've got the same thing, a lower pitch, and different type of pulse. And then I can pull through the verbs so they all have this kind of sound. And I guess like once I've got something going there, maybe I would like start to add another noise in. So this is a different type of wave, which has got some parameters essentially. And maybe I want to put like a waveform on the maybe I don't know. Not sure how well that's working. Another one in. And then maybe I'd add another filter to that. This is a Chrome filter. So this is, I don't know like if anyone has like modular synth background, but I guess this is all the like kind of things that you would do if you were playing a synth. So it's like making oscillators, adding filters to them, using like other ways to like change the of your oscillator. Add that filter in. Now it all starts getting kind of cool, light. So maybe I'll say he's gonna have some slightly different sounds. And maybe once I've got that kind of thing going, I'm going to add some like more rhythmic stuff in. So this is like this here of code. is making like basically a really rubbish drum sound. Like the drum sound I use like most of the time when I'm live coding for reasons. Anyway, it's really rubbish. It has a low character. So we're just gonna go with it. Yeah. So here, essentially, I have my drum sound, and and now I'm going to tell it how I want it to play the drum sound. So I don't want it to just play it once, because it's like a short sound. I want it to play with a particular rhythm. So I need a bit of code, which is essentially like telling it like how do I play this drum sound. So I'm giving it a frequency, so it's kind of a bass drum sound. It's giving it duration, so it's going to play like once every beat. And the rest of the stuff is kind of fine to go right now. So I might sometimes want my bass drum to have some reverb on it, so now I'm sending it. Sometimes it's going to the reverb, and then I have another bit of code down here which is like the reverb. So every third beat it goes to the reverb. And then essentially I can cut and paste that and make myself a second drum sound, which is going to have some different parameters. So I'm going to make the frequency higher, so it's more like a mid drum. And I'm going to give it a different duration. So it's going to be a bit of a wonky one. I'll just make one more drum sound. So let's just make an even higher one. Kind of wonky sound. So you can just start like building the layers and generating kind of yeah. So I guess that's kind of like a bit of an idea of how this works. And obviously we'll be getting more into the details tomorrow. Stop sharing.
Thank you, Shelly. So I wanted to ask you, what are the limitations of so now you showed us that you synthesized sounds more, but are there any possibilities to play like samples pre-recorded, or can you work with this like kind of synthesized spectrums which resemble real instruments, is it possible as well in SuperCollider?
Yeah, that's all possible. It's just more code. I mean, I sometimes work with samples in SuperCollider. I mean, the RIXC piece I showed you is all samples. It's just like different ways of like working with a sample, but you can also, I'm going to show on the second day of the workshop like how to load in a sample and work with it in the same way that I worked with like my crappy drum sound there. It's just there's like a little bit more code for doing that, and yeah, there's probably languages that are like a little bit better set up for working with samples in SuperCollider, but it's totally possible. And yeah, it's like a full It's like a full audio programming language, so you can also work with like instrument modeling and stuff as well. It's like it's all just about how much you want to get into the code and how complex you want to make it.
Yeah, but how do you feel? What are the strengths and weaknesses of working with written code to perform music? Don't you sometimes miss or lack physical interfaces, or don't you ever get lost in your code?
Oh, always get lost in the code. It's really bad. Like sometimes you're on stage and you just like have no idea what's going on around you because you're just like your head is in the your head is in the code. And it's like sometimes when you're like playing with visualists as well, it's just like you never see what they do because you're like so focused on your screen, like you never like think to like look around at like what they're making on the screen. Sorry, what was the first part of your question?
Yeah, what are the strengths of writing code, like for music? What do you think?
Yeah, I guess this is a bit of a funny question for me because I started making music with computers with code, like I never really used like DAWs or like physical interfaces or like synthesizers. I started with SuperCollider, which is like a totally random weird route into it. So like I find if I use like Ableton or like Logic or something, I feel really limited because I'm working with like someone else's interface that they've designed. Whereas like with code, you're always like building like, yeah, I guess with live coding, you don't work with interfaces like at all really, but like in some of my other projects, I might like make my own interface in SuperCollider or like I've also been working with JavaScript for like the last few years and stuff, and so like sometimes I have like a web interface for that. But yeah, I've never really worked with hardware very much. But yes, and sometimes I think it would be nice just to have like a fader just to like turn something down.
Okay, then I had a question about limits as well. You touched these. Delia Derbyshire, when asked about limited resources as a creative frame for working, replied that she's dead keen on limiting resources. So you got to impose some discipline on yourself, and then you have to choose like what to do with these limits. And how do you approach limits on SuperCollider, which are like, it's like limitless? There are kind of no limits and there's no interface. How do you approach it?
I think like the limit with SuperCollider is time, essentially. I mean, it's like if you're performing on stage and you have people in front of you, they kind of expect the music to change every now and again. So you can't go up there and like start writing some like really complex, like, you know, it might be the best algorithm in the world that makes like super great music and sounds amazing, but if you take like half an hour to write it, then it's like, you know, it's not a good performance. So like for me, like the limit with SuperCollider and live coding is always time. Like I'm like, okay, I need to make something change right now. What is like the tools that I have in my SuperCollider knowledge that can make this do something else? Like, yeah, or like maybe I want, you know, I'll have like a vague idea of like the next sound that I want, and it's like, what is the quickest route to get to that kind of sound? So yeah, I'm also like a really bad typist, so it's like like sometimes it takes me a while to type something, or I'll like make a lot of errors and need to like delete stuff. But yeah.
What do you think is live coding more directly connected to the academic world, or is it like are there people outside of academy that are like taking up SuperCollider?
SuperCollider or live coding?
Well, live coding, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think like 10 years ago, I would say like live coding was like super academic, but I think like since Algorave, I think it's like brought a lot of people in who are like not necessarily like connected to a university. Like the guy who runs most of the Algorave India gigs, he's like a programmer who works in the tech industry, and like yeah, he doesn't really have an academic connection. So yeah, it's like a really mixed bag. I mean, there are a lot of academics, but there's also a lot of people outside of academia who are like working with live coding. Probably the SuperCollider people are a bit more like academically connected, just because that's like one of the languages that you would learn in a university is SuperCollider or Max MSP. So I guess people are more likely to have used SuperCollider if they're connected to a university.
Okay. But you're in this field like since a long time already, and how do you feel? How have this field evolved and changed during this time? Is it only this move from academic world to like kind of popular thing, but maybe some other things have changed as well?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of things have changed. Like when I started, I was like the only woman in the UK who was live coding. And like so I think like diversity is one thing. So like there was like a few years around like 2013, 14, 15, where we were running like a lot of women only workshops and like doing a lot of things to like actively like try to bring women into live coding. And I think, yeah, part of like increasing the diversity has also been about like expanding what live coding means as well, and also like finding different ways to like think about live coding. So like I definitely also think like when I started live coding, it was a lot about like virtuosity and like you know, like I guess like the sort of heroic programmer on stage who's like writing his clever algorithms. And I guess like one of the things that I've been interested in like exploring with live coding is more like the punk like hacking side, and less about like precise code and more about like making stuff happen. And I think that kind of changes who is interested in this and who's interested in experimenting with it. And yeah, and I think there's just like a much more globally diverse scene now as well, also kind of through Algorave, and various people who've done some traveling and done a lot of workshops. So that's kind of awesome in terms of I guess like changing like genres and like the thinking around live coding. And yeah, I guess like Algorave didn't exist really when I started live coding, or like it existed just before I started live coding, but it was like super like unknown, just like kind of this like really nerdy thing that like, you know, I played a few Algoraves near the start where there was like not much of an audience and it was mostly other performers like watching. But like Algoraves like being this like huge scene that's kind of exploded and like had a lot of press attention, and people are kind of really interested in this way of performing, and that's like great in a lot of ways. And I guess like on the I guess it's also changed the scene away from like the more experimental side of live coding as well, like because I think when I started there was a lot more people in like I guess like really experimenting with like the limits of live coding and like more experimental systems. And now it feels sometimes like there's more focus on like making these like really like I guess dance music oriented languages, I suppose. Also, people got a lot better since I started as well. Like, I feel like the amount of onstage crashes and like the quality of the music, or like the type of music has changed quite a lot, and it's kind of moved a bit away from that like hacking yeah, like people crashing on stage and making a sine tone that goes on for 10 minutes, and more towards like people making like real music. That sounds great.
Okay. Well, yeah, as you already mentioned, the community is quite an important part of live coding. Uh, what about that the culture, at least for now, has migrated mostly to online events and online platforms? And maybe you can a bit tell us more on your experience with network live coding events and how actually this connection works. How can you connect with other people through live coding?
Yeah, I guess there's various ways. So, I mean, yeah, I talked earlier about the Estuary platform for like collaborating with other people long distance, and that's awesome. There's another language called Foxdot, which has some online interfaces. But I think most of the time, people, if they're collaborating long distance, they probably work with audio streaming, to be honest. Um, um, Yeah, yeah. I guess we were like doing online gigs before the pandemic as well. With Algorave, like there was like a couple of like streaming festivals, like Algorave streaming festivals in like 2018, maybe 2017 as well. I can't remember. So yeah, we were already doing that like kind of as a way to bring the global community together, and kind of like share, what's happening around the world, and like all to come together in this like online space like every now and again, like once a year or so. Yeah, so that was kind of the pre-pandemic thing for us. So it's been funny this year because it's been the only way that we can meet this year. There was Top Lab Mexico were experimenting last year with like VR algorithms, which was awesome. So they made some like online VR spaces, which were like super cool and super fun.
Okay, so there are a lot of possibilities there. But
Yeah.
how do you approach like there are certainly some problems that arise from being like a long distance from the collaborators. How do you approach latency if you're making like this rhythmic music, for instance?
Yeah, so when I was so my now ex collaboration Algorababes, when we were doing like long distance collaboration together, we would do it in like a really like low tech way. So essentially we would like set up the audio streaming and just make a like manual sync. Like I would hear her audio coming in and just make uh, latency on my end until I'm in sync with her stuff. Um, and like, yeah, we should have worked out a better way to do it, but I guess a lot of the time with those collaborations, you just don't have like the time to work together. But with the Estuary platform, for example, like everything is synced locally. So the only thing that's sent over the network is code. And then it's all executed on your machine, basically. So there's never any sync problem because everything's synchronized where you are. Um, and yeah, it's the same with the Foxdot platform as well, that it's just the code that's sent. Um, yeah, there are other platforms like also Olivia Jack made this platform called LiveLab, which is a bit like Zoom but for audiovisual performance. But again, I think you have to do the sync kind of manually.
Okay. For people who are just thinking to start out with SuperCollider, how steep is the learning for actually making SuperCollider do what you want, and how long after starting out you got to it, or well, maybe you never get to it, but at least to do some, yeah, to get to some level of be prepared.
You're always learning with SuperCollider. You never stop. I mean, I've been using it since, oh my God, 2005. I started learning SuperCollider. That makes me feel really old. Um, Yeah, so but I'm still learning. I still like yeah, we'll see someone on stage live coding with SuperCollider and see something that I've never done before, because it's like it's like an enormous language and you can like never learn it, I think is what I've learned in the last 16 years. But I don't know, like I feel like just kind of getting started, and um I think I think like live coding is about making music with what you know. So it's like if you can like make some sine tones and make um uh some um modulators, like some other waves that are going to change the sine tones in some way, and you can make some simple beats, you can like play a live coding show. And it's just about like working out how to make music with the bits of code that you do know, and like how to work with that. And I don't think it's like, I don't think you have to be a pro SuperCollider um, programmer to do a gig with it. It's just, yeah, it's
Got it.
working in your own limitations.
Okay, we had a question here from the audience about live live events. So, is it a mix of pre-programming and mixing on stage with what you have done previously, like writing code beforehand and then executing it on stage, or how does it work?
This is like totally based on your own preference. So if you write all of your code beforehand and you go on stage and you change some numbers, and or you like work with like turning on and off bits of code, that's totally live coding. What I do is usually I start with no code at all. So like what I showed you now is like more code than I would usually start with in a set. And like probably like back in the back in the old days of live coding, I think like people thought that that's the only thing that counts as live coding, if you like go onto stage with no code. And but that's like totally not the case right now. And like, but the funny thing is, this like started a whole live coding practice, because the Mexico live coding scene started because they saw some like videos online of like people live coding, and they thought, oh, this is really cool. We're gonna like learn to do this, and like they started doing like meetups where they would all like do live coding together. But they like saw someone who was doing this like style of live coding where you start with no code, and they thought that that's how it has to be live coding. So they started this like practice, which is like 9 minute live coding, where you have to start from nothing and your set is whatever you write in like 9 minutes. It's like from scratch, 9 minutes from scratch or something. So this is like this like kind of fun like form of like live coding, which like started out of like this kind of slight misunderstanding that live coding has to be like everything from scratch. But yeah, no, it's cool. It's like whatever you want to start with, whatever makes you feel comfortable. Like lots of people like to start with some code. I don't like to start with code, actually, just because I get lost in it if I have too much code on my screen when I start. So I prefer from scratch.
Is there actually such a thing as most noted live coders, and that should be like checked out before, yeah, when you're starting in this field, like some?
I don't know. I mean, there's like known live coders, I suppose. So like Rennick Bell, I guess, is quite well known. Like Alex McLean, Alexandra Cardenas. Yeah, for some old school, there's like the Mandelbrots in Germany. Andrew Sorensen, I guess, is kind of like a old school live coder who's not really doing much anymore, but is kind of one of the pioneers, more or less. Yeah, there's people.
Who are your biggest influences in music and in live coding? Do you have any?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, maybe Alexandra. I guess we kind of started around the same time, or maybe she started a bit before me, but like we both come from like a composition background, so I like really like what she does. Um, there's a Colombian live coder called Celeste Bedenker, and I really like what she does as well because she's more in like the really noisy, like glitchy side of live coding that I really enjoy. Um, and yeah, I guess I enjoy like the more experimental live coding. Yeah, Joanna Chikao, she like experiments with, or she like does live coding with web pages, and I think it's like super cool and interesting. So yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you were awarded with the Oram Award. And does it mean anything to you? And how did you get actually, yeah, noticed?
Um, I think you got, I think it was like a nomination process. So I think they like asked people in the industry to like nominate people. And then of everyone who was nominated, they asked them to essentially then apply. So you had to send um like a CV and like some um examples of your work, and you had to yeah, you got like a little bit of money and you had to say like what you would do with the money, like to develop your practice and stuff. So yeah, it was kind of a funny process. So you got like nominated and then you applied and then they chose from everyone who applied, like the people who got the award. Um, but I think actually I applied with some network music projects, not with live coding.
Okay. Yeah, and what are your thoughts on the necessity of documenting improvised live coding? Like it's like with improvised music, you play it and then it's gone. But yeah, does anyone has started working with this kind of cultural heritage thing in the field of live coding, kind of keeping documenting things?
That's a good question. I guess there's like in this day of like YouTube and live stream performances, there's like a lot of like live code performances online, but I don't know like how much people have like I don't think anyone's really like gone through and like tried to like make an archive or like try to analyze this or anything. Which would be really interesting, I think. Um, yeah, quite a few people have kind of made albums, which I suppose are like improvised and then edited. I mean, Algorave had like an album which was like um, one track on it was just a exit from a live performance, and the other one was like a edit of a studio jam. So we like did like a 40-minute jam in the studio, and then I edited it down to a 20-minute track, more or less. Um, but yeah, I'm kind of bad at like documenting anything that I do. And I also like I kind of feel weird about recorded live coding as well because like so much of it is about like um, the experience and like seeing it kind of unfold live and like seeing the code and how it evolves. So recordings don't make so much sense to me, but yeah.
Would you say that you have a philosophy of sound, some kind of?
Like you mean like an aesthetic or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
no. I mean, I guess my interest is in this sort of like human interaction with technology and what kind of unfolds from that kind of unpredictable interaction. Um, and sort of working with algorithms that might push you to do something different than if you had been um, doing something without intervening algorithms. So I guess that's less about sound and more about performance.
Okay, okay. Maybe someone from the audience has a question as well. You can ask. Yeah, when you were doing the demo, it was
we had a bit of glitchy sound because of talking over, and there was a request if you would agree to do like a 3-minute outro as well.
Oh yeah, I can do that.
That would be super great. Yeah, maybe anyone has a question, you can raise a hand or just write it down. Yeah, because I think I'm out of questions already, but I'm already really keenly looking forward to these 2 days in the workshop. Yeah, I could quickly check if there are any questions on YouTube. But yeah, so I think it's quite interesting that that you're talking a lot about algorithms, but they're surely like linked to this to music. And how do you feel that this kind of how do you actually compose in SuperCollider? How like do you feel? Yeah, how do you feel that you're in charge of this composition when it's being kind of it's like very open-ended.
That was like a super interesting question. I don't know. I think like I used to like I trained as a composer, like who writes notes on a page, and like even when I was doing that, I always like had elements in the piece that were improvised or like semi-improvised, and where I was working with like SuperCollider patches, where I was able to like process the sound in real time, and that was always like kind of improvised as well. So I guess I've always been interested more in like improvisation and like what happens in that interaction in the moment, and less about like structure and form, and like composition in the more like traditional sense. I mean, it's totally possible in SuperCollider to like compose a piece. Like you can schedule stuff to happen over time and like be very precise with it, and like make fully formed like compositions in SuperCollider. But I think like being in control is just like not something that's ever interested me. I've always been more interested in the friction of the interaction, I suppose, or like the like momentary things that come out of like the unexpected. And that's yeah, I guess that's more about I guess I'm more interested in like what happens when you let go of control than I am in like controlling things. Yeah.
Maybe you can tell some maybe I don't know some kind of yeah well some inspiration for those who will be just starting out. And yeah, then we should finish. Ah, do we have a question? Yeah. If we have a question, please raise hand.
I have a question. So you said you come from your background is that you are a musician, as I understand. Don't you get anxious about the fact that you need to wait, for example, 5 seconds after you actually hear the result of a bit of a code? When you're writing, did you understood? It seems quite strange.
Yeah, I guess it's a state of mind. I guess when I started, I did feel like really anxious about that, but like I guess you just kind of get into the practice and like you kind of understand that as like part of what you're doing. I was always doing like I guess before I started live coding, I was doing a lot of improvisation in ensembles. And I kind of felt like with live coding, it's like a bit like when you're in an improv ensemble that like you have no idea like what the trumpet player is going to do in like 5 seconds time, and you just have to like respond to whatever kind of unfolds that's totally unexpected. And so when I started live coding, I kind of, even when I was solo, I kind of got the same feeling of like I'm kind of responding to what's going on, and I am shaping it in some way, but I'm not fully in control of this, and that's kind of what's interesting about it. Yeah. Yeah. I guess, yeah. I don't know if I've ever, like what I said to Krista just now, I guess I never really was that interested in like being in full control of like sound or like fully like determining in advance what's supposed to happen. I'm kind of more interested in the sort of freedom in the moment and exploring something that you don't know what it's going to be. And you can always change it. I mean, if you make something that sounds really horrible, then you just change it, or find a way to make it work.
Okay. Do we have any more questions from the audience? Okay. Well, thank you, Shelly, for this introduction, and it was really well stated, and yeah, I guess now we are much more like we now know a bit what Algorave is about, and for everyone that will be participating tomorrow and on Friday, yeah, let's then meet every day at 4 p.m. and have a good time together and connect. And so if you're okay with this, then it would be nice if you do an outro as well to our online event. And thank you again very much for your presentation. It was lovely, and see you tomorrow.
Yeah, great. Thanks for listening, and I'm looking forward to the workshop.
Thank you.
Okay, and yes, so while Shelly sets up, yes, so this was, oh, yes, I guess you're ready. Okay, then tomorrow, till tomorrow, everyone. Thank you for listening. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you all for participating. Thank you, Shelly, for giving the lecture and updating us in Latvia about live coding. And yeah, see you, everybody who has applied to workshop. See you tomorrow. If you have some questions, you can ask them via email info@mplab.lab.
Okay. Yes.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you. It was really nice.
It was nice.